Sophie, you've talked about materials as they carry meaning.
Yes.
In this body of work, we see blue velvet, steel, silicone, concrete. Is there meaning in those specific materials for you, or is it more about creating opportunities to kind of call forth association from your audience?
I think it's probably both. Probably most of the things you'll ask, I'm gonna be like, oh, it's both. But so for example, like blue velvet is just like a really, I think, evocative material just in and of itself. When you see it or think about it, it's like luxury and sort of finery, and it's used to display jewelry, or you can think back to like the Virgin Mary and the royal blue being reserved for, or paintings of the Virgin Mary and the color royal blue being reserved for really special individuals
To elevate.
To elevate, exactly. And so I was interested in all of that kind of embedded messaging that the material has, and then sort of pairing it with a very different quality feeling object. So some more like mundane or pedestrian kind of linear, like almost line drawings that are negative space, little like alcoves, so that it creates a sense of like, oh, that's a pocket for something, and suggesting that that something is really precious, but not actually answering the question of what that thing is.
Blue velvet impressioned objects came from a violin case you found, right?
Yeah. So before making this body of work, I was making a lot of work that explored sound and music as sort of a vehicle to explore intimacy and connection and also isolation. And I came across this electric violin, and it was in a blue velvet case, and I just sort of became really curious about that case. I mean, it was beautiful, and the idea of the negative shape when the violin wasn't in it, told such a story and let me know like, oh, this is for something special. This is for something important. And it's such a violin is just an elegant shape as well. So I got really interested in what could I do with that material and that premise of negative space. So when I was very young, about 3 years old, there had been a fire in our house. It was kind of scary. It was scary, but it was also hopeful. And my brother and I were kind of running around playing, and there was a heating grate on the ground that I fell into. There was no grate, actually. It was just sort of like this metal square
in the floor.
Yeah. And I fell, and I cut my knee really badly. And then there was a door leaning against the wall that I guess I hit, and it fell on top of me and pinned me there. And so I started screaming and crying. And my brother, even though we were like running around chasing each other, a moment before, he came in and, as a 5-year-old, like pushed the door back up. And then my parents came in the room and lifted me up and put me in the kitchen sink to clean out my big cut on my knee. And that memory, I think, locked in a lot of things about space and family and sort of vulnerability and fear connected to love and care. And then like my whole body as a 3-year-old was like in the kitchen sink. So I think that just maybe something happened in my brain neurons, and it was like, I'm scared. because, and I'm in pain, but my family is here taking care of me, and I'm sitting in this vessel, this basin in the kitchen.
Your body was kind of inside two different cavities in the house within moments of each other, and one was painful and one was comforting.
Right.
You know, falling into this hole in the floor versus being held in the sink.
Right.
Like both of those things were kind of in immediate and stark contrast to each other.
Yeah. And then you zoom out even further, and the feeling of like the whole house is a container, which is where I felt really safe, and connected. And I loved, being there. And then that house was on fire, right? So this part that makes you feel really strong and secure is also where you're vulnerable, right? Like that kind of is
The duality, yeah. Which the soaps, for folks that are hearing this and haven't seen the work yet, are sitting on a sewn pillow being presented,
Yeah.
again, almost like jewelry or something precious, but are these artifacts of like a daily, hopefully daily ritual.
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But and the pillow is that weird hospital minty green. So it's kind of playing with the modes of presentation, and again, like expectations of material and what that calls forth. Right, like they would feel really different if they were on a velvet pillow.
Right.
It'd be like, look at these are fancy, or these are, but the kind of disconnect, maybe it's not a disconnect, but the familiarity of a material in an unfamiliar way, I think makes our brains have to process differently. And so you kind of can connect more with an emotional knowing, or a sort of story-based knowing that isn't linear, but is still narrative.
A lot of your objects are inspired by or are molded from found object, but you pretty much always go through this process of fabrication, which I assume creates kind of an ownership over that object, but also like it removes it from the source. So I wonder if you can just talk about why that's important to you.
Yeah. Like a found object is that thing, and it sort of has that one identity. And usually what I'm interested in is an object or a sculpture that sort of has multiple identities. And so I need to make that. And I draw from, like, I've been thinking about these chairs that my parents had growing up, and how I have one in my apartment, and this bent aluminum leg, and this sort of, that has an iconic element, or what is the word? Like it's sort of an archetypal shape or form for me. And I think because of its prevalence in design language for other people too, but I'm not interested in just showing the chair, but using that design language and knowing that it creates that association to kind of pair it or draw it in with other associations or other memories. I want people who see it, who engage with the work, to, it's the universal and specific idea, right? Like they can project themselves or their experience onto it and see a familiarity in the thing that has more to do with them sort of touching back to their own memory, rather than imagining who is the specific person whose hair that is that I see on that. So it's which would make it more of a portrait, I think, right? Like the actual soap points to a specific person, and a cast of a soap points to a specific person, but also then it's an artifact, and like you said, it's maybe a little bit more of an idea. It's also sort of like how memory works, right?
Right.
Like you remember something that happened and you can remember it really vividly, and you know it, but it's also a little bit inaccessible because it happened in the past, of course, right? And your memory of it may be really different than your brother's memory of it, even though it's the same event. Um, and so casting objects is kind of like that, like the cast becomes a memory of the thing. It's not the thing.
It's the impression.
It's the impression of it. But also just because it's the impression of it doesn't mean it's not real, right? You still have to encounter it and deal with it in real time, in real space, and its impact on you. And then it can also change.
There's kind of a constant pairing of impressions and then objects themselves, which kind of you have this like missing elements, and you have a present element. You have like things that are very tangible,
Yeah.
and you have things that point at something that was once there but is now simplified to just a shape as opposed to an object. And that duality, I think, speaks to memory very well, in that we never remember all of it in detail.
I think with my work, like there's a lot of the ideas and sort of the intellectualizing of it. And I'm a person who likes to make, and I'm interested in made things. And so the act of doing that and the discovery that happens from doing that is a really fruitful creative space for me that doesn't happen as much when I'm working with a found object. Sometimes I develop crushes on materials. I'm just like, ooh, I want to work with that. Like that is or a material comes to me. I mean, a lot of times like the ideas sort of are there, like percolating, and then a material is something that I'm interested in working with. And so the ideas kind of manifest through that material. Concrete, I think I'm interested in almost for the opposite reasons of velvet. It's such a pedestrian material. It's like sidewalks in construction, hard, durable, not, we think of it as like a pretty disposable material, even though like the mining practices for concrete are not good for the world.
It's also interesting because when casting it, it is actually pretty fragile. Like it cracks very easily.
Yeah, when it's thin.
Yeah.
And also now when it's polished, it's gorgeous. And like, it's very trendy to have polished concrete countertops. So it can act almost as like a material foil for some of the softer, more flexible things. I think that's how I started thinking about it. And then there's another piece in the front that has a really soft kind of bulbous body feeling to it. And that can, sometimes they come out of really simple questions like, how do I make something feel soft at something very hard? Like it's not work that's about gender and
Sure.
about inequity, but it's something that I encounter as a maker all the time. And so that's one piece. And then there's another piece is that like even manufactured objects are made, right? And there are humans who make them or design them, maybe robots make them. And I think kind of bringing back that idea of madeness, even in industrial produced things, is a conversation that I'm interested in. Something that you were saying before, or a question about the humor element. Is that where you're? Um,
Humor or play.
or,
I think
yeah, both. Like, but I think also that like making. What did you say? You said that it removes it from a specific body, or like when I make something that like looks like it could have been fabricated or like purchased or fabricated industrially and purchased, like I can make it baby blue, which is kind of goofy, right? Like, or I can, yeah, like introduce a color or introduce a juxtaposition that brings some levity and a sense of like, isn't it wacky that we're all bodies? In a way, like not wacky isn't the right thing, but like there's a little bit of embrace like a very serious engagement with the fact of bodies and the fact of like we're bodies that remember, we're bodies that uh have like very physical encounters and very non-physical encounters at the same time. And
there's
like,
absurdity.
there's absurdity and that's wild. Like
Right.
and delightful.
There's a wonder,
Too, right?
to
Like
it,
a one, yeah.
and like the call to curiosity.
Yeah, and sort of like the whimsy of being a child, kind of exploring objects when objects don't have names, right? When it's just like square thing, squishy thing, soft thing.
Does this fit into this?
Does it, yeah, can I put it in my hand? Can I bounce on top of it? Can I eat it, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
if I throw it, what sound does it make? And all of that like way of understanding the world and like what does it make me feel and like how is it in relationship to my mom or my brother or my friend, like that doesn't have to do with like naming like this is chair, this is ball, this is pillow. It's like this is comforting, this is scratchy.
You really were coming into like the placement or the arrangement of these objects in relationship to themselves, to each other, to you, to the space, being whatever they needed to be in that moment. And I don't, again, know where the question is other than to say, how does that feel, or like what is that about for you?
How does it work?
Yeah, how does that work,
yeah,
that the play shows up even after?
there's a few things going on. I think you're right. Like I do have this very like kind of rigidity or commitment to a specificity in making and certain ideas about like how it should be because of how I want it to be. You know, like
Mhm.
it's that
There's a
piece
control.
that's got to be this way. But then I think once that happens, it's like choreographing a dance almost like, oh, this dancer is really good over here. And now we're going to bring in this dancer and see what they do together, like how they relate. And then also thinking about how proximity and distance work is a big piece of it. Like even when creating these panels, like I think of these as sort of contained installations. So it's not just about what objects are on them, but where they are placed in relationship to each other. Some things are very close or something spread apart. Part of it is when I started working with flexible and soft materials that allowed more play, which felt really good and felt like then there was opportunity to continue to learn something about the piece even after it was made, even after it was like finished.
In here, you're work is on a white wall, but in a non-traditional kind of space.
Yeah, this space is super, and also like the feel of the front windows and the feel of inside is really
Very
different.
different, yeah.
And the context of those windows spaces is kind of O positive, but it's more stockade.
Yeah.
And the sort of retail district that this is. With a retail district, that language of display and that language of how do you appeal to a viewer and entice them is already there. It's already sort of like in the water, and I leaned into it. I was really interested in how people would see the work as they turned the corner, or what sight lines there would be, like what, a freeze frame, what would be in relationship to what. Whereas in here, it feels more like a traditional, as you said, traditional gallery space, white walls. And these works, while sculptural, like having dimension, they are also in a painting language, right? They're sort of proportions and scale and relationships of color, ground, like object and ground.
The rectangle.
The rectangle.
I'm wondering what you would like to share about the title of the show, In the Pale Light of Shadow, We Put Together a House. Whether, where that comes from, or whatever, what that means for you, why that felt like a good container for this body of work.
Yeah. It comes from the book In Praise of Shadows. In the pale light is sort of this qualified, or it's not like in the bright shining sunlight we like strode forth into the beautiful future. There is some shadow there, but then it's also maybe the shadow is providing a little bit of protection from the hot sun, and the sort of necessity of both light and shadow together. The sort of optimism in the face of kind of not ideal circumstances, and like giving it a go anyway. We put together a house, I think, is also evocative in that it's in the past tense. So we did this, it's a memory now. We don't know what the current state of the we is, if it's just a single person recalling this time sort of fondly, but that doesn't exist anymore, or if it's two people together remembering something. And so there's that allusion to partnership or relationship, and an ambiguity about what that is and its presence or absence. But it's sort of sad too, right? That we put together a house, like we did this thing, and sort of like some sense of like it's gone now. But maybe it's not, the thing isn't gone, but the doing of the thing is gone. We just we have the memory of it, we don't have that moment of it.
Right, or that the change, because the change is constant, there's no state of being that is also constant.
Right.
Right, the state changes even if the objects are still there.
Right, and there can be longing even when there's stuff present too.